Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of TCG Talk. Back today with another video and a very exciting video that I'm super excited to talk about. We finally had a Katsu winner win a PQ. Super exciting and awesome. I ended up getting to talk to the player about their experiences and asked them if I could do a deep dive on their deck and just kind of like go over it. And they said it was okay. So we're gonna go over it today. Nothing crazy, nothing nitpicky. Really, just kind of going over their thoughts on the deck, what they experienced, and then kind of talking about the deck itself. I won't name the person in the Discord because even though they gave me permission to talk about their deck, I don't know if they want to be hounded or talked to or whatever. So I will simply just allow them to reveal themselves if they want in the comments. But I'll just keep it straightforward as it is. So looking at the deck, right? This Katsu went 7-1 in its and I'm gonna be referring to my notes sometimes here. Went 7-1 in its event and only losing to one Viscerai. And then as far as matchups are concerned, it only faced one Starvo, which some people would say the Katsu, did really well and got lucky with it. Some would say like that's just a more diverse meta. You can't pick who you play, who you don't play. So like we've been saying, as long as Starvo starts to slowly go down, which should happen eventually, I think that Katsu has a really good place in the meta. But only had one loss to Vis. Ended up being a Starvo as well. The one Starvo they played. So overall, really good record. I kind of asked them some questions about the deck, right? Because the deck is definitely unique, and that's not even a bad thing. But as you can see, like running two blackout kicks, right? Two hurricane techniques, running two salt the wounds. I love this card, but they're running two of it, and running the talisman and recompense, which is really the kind of the spice of the deck, right? So we'll kind of go over this. So definitely an aggro list. It is running Tunic instead of cross trap, but still an aggro list. With breaking scales, mass momentum, and snapdragon scalers, 100 wins combo makes sense. The blues is the first thing I'll go over. It's really interesting, and it's one of the questions I asked this person. I asked them about 4 questions. The first question was they're running yellow even bigger than that, right? So what's the question of yellow versus red? Is it better? Is it worse? Do you whiff more? Have you noticed maybe you whiffed more in your testing? And they said no. It was no difference. Like I've said before, I don't think yellow whiffs more, but I do think you're able to fix your next hand a little bit better. But at the end of the day, right, you're still getting the main use out of this card, which is the draw mechanic with the quicken token. So, but I did ask how much if they were whiffing, and how much were they, because they do have about 18 cards in the deck that can whiff. So, blue 100 wins will whiff. Ancestral Empowerment, blue Rising Knee Thrust is a whiff, Razor Reflex, as well as the Talisman, and lunging presses. So they have a decent, and whelming gust wave. So they have a decent amount of cards that will whiff on it, but they said they didn't whiff, which, or if any. So it's really good to see that you can kind of play around with not having, as many cards in the deck that don't trigger it, and it still ends up hitting. I'm sure that like if you got into the math of it, the margins and percentages are very low, right? So it's really cool to see that. Running the blue 100 wins is really good. A lot of people have been toying with the blue 100 wins along with the reds just to kind of help out a little bit more. It is a block two. The other question that I ended up asking is like, how did the play style, is it super aggro? Is it more mid range? They said it was aggro. They had, several 2-3 card draw turns with 20 plus damage, and that's definitely an aggro list. But this list also, the reason I like this list, and we're going to get into an aggro versus mid range video here soon this week, is this list can easily switch to a mid range style of play with what it has. And so mainly being aggro, yes, but being able to swap in the mid range if you need to. I did ask also, why Red Soul Bead and not Red Torrent, right? So because Soul Bead, there's no Crane Dance in this, so he's using Soul Bead solely because it's 0 cost. It still hits the 4 breakpoint, so they need a D react or 2 cards from hand or a card from hand equipment, whatever it may be, in order to block it out. So it kind of accomplishes the same thing as Torrent. It's a little bit harder to block out, or easier to block out, because you can sync this or Fate Foreseen it or whatever. You can't do that with Torrent. So there is a trade off there, but it is 0 cost, and you can use it to discard for Katsu, which is what they said they wanted to be able to use it for. So that's why they went with this with the Soul Bead over the Torrent Tempo. The next thing that I kind of asked about was, we asked about the yellow even bigger than that. Asked about the Soul Bead. Asked about the 2 leg tap finishers, right? Like running 2 blackout kicks and 2 hurricane techniques. How did that feel in testing? Did they end up getting it off multiple times? And they said they did, as well as the fact that they could block with a hurricane technique, which is a block 3, or block with a blackout kick, which is a block 3, and know that they at least had one more of each in the deck, which is very nice. a lot of people that have looked at, not a lot, a good amount of people that I've talked to that looked at this list were like, this list is a little weird or whatever, right? Like to me, this list is very strong in the fact of other than Talisman, it doesn't have any one-off cards, right? You'll see a lot of Katsu lists that have one Crane Dance in them, or one Rushing River and one Break Tide, or even two Rushing River and one Break Tide, right? He doesn't have any of that. He has two of every card except for Talisman. So his consistency in hitting the cards he wants to hit is pretty high, right? So there's something to learn from this Katsu, and the fact of maybe if you're not noticing the consistency you want to notice, maybe stop writing the one off of some of those things, right? Um, so that was another question I asked. And then the final question I asked that was really kind of interesting was he's not writing any unmovables in the sideboard. As you see, he's writing three sink belows, three flick flacks, two command conquers, and null rune. We obviously know what the null rune's for. Command conquer is pretty obvious. But he's writing 6-0 cost D reacts with no unmovables. And I asked him how that went against a Starvo, which is what I ended up figuring out. He'd only played one Starvo, which is fine. And he said that, you know, he wanted to be able to not have clunky hands. He could still use the flick flacks and sinks for Winter's Will if they sub him in, and overall just blocking out as much as he can. And then, you know, he's kind of saying what I've said before, where against Starvo, you kind of have to draw really well and draw fire early on and get tempo, which is what he did. But so by late game, you force them to block out, right? Which is exactly what he did. And uh, he said something funny where he was like, I got a little lucky with what I drew, drawing into my combo lines. Yes, does this game have some RNG and luck aspect to it? Of course. But I would also not say that's luck. I would say that that's the fact that you have two of every card in your deck minimum, and the consistency of which you're hitting your combo lines is going to be really high, right? Like if you think about it, just the leg tab and surging line of this deck is 3, 6, 8, 10, uh, 13, 15. I'm not going to even count the blues here. 15. Team against she's a 17. So not counting his blues of those, he has 17 cards. Almost a third of his deck is the leg tap and McGinty line, right? If you count the blues, it's 20 and 23 of them, right? So 23 of his cards, over a third of his deck is, you know, is that, right? Even more so because I missed the woman. So as you can see, right, over a third of his deck is those two lines. So the consistency of him to hit those lines is really high. So some people say that you draw luck in the combos. No, I say that you just had good ratios and you're consistently seeing the cards that you want to play. Yes, there's a little luck involved. Of course, it's a card game, but overall, I don't see it as luck. The last question, there was one more, was the spice of the deck was Talisman or Recompense. Like I asked the player, like, how often did you get this card off, right? Because the way I'm looking at it in a nutshell, right, without talking to the player, without doing testing, it is a little weird because you have already what, two, five, if we count here, right, eight, uh 11 cards in the deck that don't attack. And when you add in Talisman, that's 12, right? So there's a chance that you could have an off turn where maybe you draw two of these. So now you're having to play Talisman. You're kind of losing tempo in order to play it. So then you can gain tempo in a hand that may or may not happen, right? Because what this card is for is the 4 red hand, which most Katsus hate, right? You don't want the 4 red hand. It sucks. But so he's trying to mitigate that by having Talisman on the field. So if he draws that 4 red hand, he can then pitch a red to do whatever. But this also takes a little bit of setup because it doesn't do anything for you on the turn that it's played, right? So it's a little bit of a trade-off, right? He said that, you know, he got off one time when it was really useful. It wasn't really like a must-have or must-do in the deck. But what he did do was he used it to pitch for Gadachis. He also, you know, it's really good on like a 2-card hand, right? Like if Starvo makes you discard and you have 2 red cards in hand, you can at least pitch one of your reds out, you know, Kadachi, and then attack. So at least you're forcing a card out of hand off mash draw or getting mash draw if they just say screw it. So it's really good maybe for a 2 or 3 card hand as well. And that was his thought process. So overall, really like the deck. Very unique deck, but not unique in the point where it's doing complete jank cards that don't make sense. It's more of like, it's just a good solid deck that has a game plan and knows what it's going to do. I think you could definitely learn some things from this deck. Like I said, no one-off cards. Try to keep your ratios more tight. Is really useful. You know, think outside the box with Talisman and Recompense. 9 out of 10 players would probably say it's not worth it. He said, nah, I'm gonna try it. So he did it, right? Yellow bigger than that's versus blue or red is a really interesting point, right? So overall, it's a great list. I really enjoyed looking at the list. Hopefully we see more Katsus be more successful. I think we had 2 Katsu wins yesterday. So congratulations to the winners. Hopefully, we can help add to that tally. And keep going with Katsu. I think he's in a really good spot, like I said, and it's just gonna keep getting better and better, I think. But hopefully y'all enjoyed this deck tech. I will be going over these more and more as I can. And kind of going over deep dives when I can when players allow me to, so we can kind of see how other Katsus play. Because as much as people may like or dislike my content, it's nice to see how other players are playing because you want to see the differences. Yeah, hopefully you have a good rest of your day. I hope you all enjoy your ProQuest season and continue to have success with whoever you're playing. If you like this video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. If not, that's totally fine. Go to another Flesh Bread creator, do the same thing for them, or go leave a like, comment, subscribe on their stuff so we can get more people seeing this game. And yeah, I will see y'all next time on TCG Talk. Thank y'all so much.